We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady. We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
You just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo here with Mike Renner. That's right, man. We got Mike Renner lonely. Are you a free agent or just left to your own devices?
I'm just sabbatical is what I think we're calling it.
Sabbatical.
Which I usually take during the summer anyway.
That's true. You're rooting for sabbatical. Let's be serious here.
So just when I thought I was out.
I'm over here like, what are you going to do? You lost your podcast partner, and it's just, you're like, oh, I hope everybody forgets.
I was going to take the summer off is what I was going to do.
Summer of Mike. What does the summer of Mike look like?
I'm playing a lot of golf. I've started doing yoga.
Really?
So we're picking up hobbies.
I love seeing you get older.
Yeah.
That's great. You hobbled in here. You said you had a basketball injury?
Oh, yeah. I came in yesterday. I got knocked in the mouth. If you're looking on the YouTube video, I look like an IG model with my lip. It's a little bigger than normal. I got knocked in the mouth, almost knocked tooth out, and then I also got hammered in my leg. I'm too old to be playing pickup basketball anymore.
See what I was dealing with.
Yeah,
during,
it's not great.
When we were playing hoops. We both have some bright shirts on. I've got my Cool Clinic shirt because I am a 5-time.
That's the Cool Clinic, the mushroom. Is there a reason behind that?
So they call it the Mushroom Society or something because they're all like
they're fat.
They're like a fungus and they grow in the shade. They just kind of go off in their corner and do offensive line stuff. I forget the exact explanation. It's on the website. I should know as a 5-time keynote speaker, but I've got some bright and you've got your.
I got my family, my Illinois, where I grew up, Champaign.
So you're here filling in for Sam, still on the road. He's got no AC, by the way, so he's going through Middle America here.
Oh, and that car has no AC. That makes sense, actually.
The air conditioner's out or not working. It's just not working.
Okay.
And he said it's 90 plus from here on out. He's sending me a lot of breakfast comments. He's sending breakfast pictures. We might do a whole show on breakfast across America.
I would like to see you actually try to get in that car. It does not look like it's got legroom. I'll just say that. That is not. It looks a little tight.
You know, I was. I might have some video of me in some small cars recently on a little PFF excursion.
Oh,
so I might. You know, the E5 could be a challenge, but Sam's still going. You're in. That's my first in-studio guest. I've had a couple guests. We had Rick Spielman, Greg Rosenthal, Trevor Sikkema. You're my favorite, though, of the group. It's good to have you here. But what we're talking about is the great PFF Tailgate podcast is no longer. Austin Gale is gone. Bigger and
officially today.
Officially today. He's out. Getting called up to the big leagues, kind of. We don't know where yet, though.
Can we say? I mean, he definitely should be able to say he's starting to work there. So I don't know. He hasn't tweeted it out yet, though. So we won't steal his thunder.
We won't. But yeah. And so we don't know what's going to happen to Tailgate, man.
I will have a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I will have one, and I imagine it'll be on the Tailgate channel still. So if you want to subscribe, you'll probably get my podcast.
Yeah, stick with Tailgate. Stick with Tailgate. We'll find somebody for Mike, but we'll keep your skills sharp here, and just talk some NFL. And,
little reps, game reps.
You need reps.
Yeah.
You lose some chemistry. You guys did a really good job of building the brand, having some fun, doing your thing. Podcasting's a lot more about just disseminating information, right?
Yes, it is not. It is not reading a spreadsheet, as the nerds, as we get called, say we do on the outside. But it's a lot of fun. It's actually my favorite thing to do about my job. So hopefully I do get one here at some point.
Yeah. So you and I don't have the same chemistry. But, we'll make it work.
We had some good shows back in the day. The OG draft shows back 2017, was it, or 16? Were the best. Were some of the best shows.
We did do some good stuff. So it's good to have you back. I like talking ball with you. And you've been at PFF for over 10 years. We can get into a whole history. I liked listening to the last tailgate because I knew the story that was going to come up the day you got fired.
Yes.
Because I also had a little interaction.
We had a fun time that
weekend with Neil. I think what we realized is sometimes Neil's blood sugar's low. And when his blood sugar's low, some crazy stuff happens. People get fired. You work 20-hour days. Like, who knows? You don't know what's going to happen. I think that Memorial Day was just a rough weekend.
Yeah, sometimes you have to finish 20 games in a week, and that's just how it is. And
I also had to do
my games. Your job.
Yeah. I had to do my games that weekend, and I didn't. But here we are. Look at us.
Yeah.
Look at us. We're still here. So listen to the last tailgate, the most recent tailgate. There's some good stuff on there. The famous John Ross story. There's a lot of
infamous John Ross story.
Infamous, yeah, not famous. Not great. But anyway, here's what I wanted to get into. I feel like I'm asking all my guests this, where I put biggest NFL storylines in the title. All of our listeners know what I think the biggest storyline is this offseason, was this massive shift to paying wide receivers and now the movement of elite wide receivers and what that does, the impact. Because I'm a big shiny objects guy, right? I think Davante Adams elevates an offense. I think Tyreek Hill elevates an offense. A.J. Brown elevates an offense. They're leaving two elite quarterbacks in Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, and a Ryan Tannehill whose career has completely changed since A.J. Brown got drafted. They're going to new situations. What's that going to do for their old situations, and how much can they elevate their new situations? I think this is the biggest story in the NFL this offseason.
I 100% agree, and I also think that teams are buying in. And it's something we've said for a few years now, that it's not okay to just be a good offense in the NFL anymore. You have to be putting up you have to be capable of going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, Josh. You have to be able to put up 40 at a moment's notice to win a Super Bowl or to get in the conversation of the Super Bowl consistently in today's NFL. So saying, we have a nice 1-2 punch at wide receiver, it's not enough anymore. Yeah. You have to have a lot of guys, and I think we saw that in this year's draft finally, teams saying, oh shit, we have to, just because we have a guy doesn't mean we're set. So you saw, 6 receivers go in the top 16 picks, or top 18 picks. And it's just they started flying off the board. Whereas 2 years ago, I don't think it was that dissimilar in terms of talent-wise from the 2019 wide receiver class, where A.J. Brown goes second round, Deebo Samuel goes second round, DK Metcalf goes second round. Right. If we redo that, or if teams sort of had the philosophy that they do now of what they had back then had the philosophy they do now, we would have seen a lot of those guys go a lot higher, and you would have seen this arms race start earlier, because I do think teams are realizing, just having a balanced offense and defense, you're going to be the Titans, basically. You're going to be okay, you're going to be in the playoffs, but you're not going to compete for Super Bowls unless you can really light up scoreboards.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on if you go back to 2019 and how maybe the NFL has just changed since then. I think valuing receivers, their impact, receivers in volume. One of the things I think there's more to study, though, is the impact of a true wide receiver one, right? We talk a lot about, Tyreek Hill dictates coverage. Well, what does that do for the offense? We can – I think we'll be able to point at the end of the season, because I think the Chiefs are going to see more man coverage this year. I don't think there's guys on the team that are scary that you can't play man. So we're going to be able to say, okay, here's how teams played the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill and without Tyreek Hill. So he dictates coverage. Or Davante Adams can take over a game. A.J. Brown absolutely has taken over games. But what's the other effect? What's their gravity? How much are they drawing coverage? All that stuff. I think that stuff exists, but it's been hard to quantify unless you're just saying, but here's how we'll be able to do it this year. If Derek Carr puts up MVP-like production, or Tua takes a big step forward, right, statistically, but maybe his PFF grade is similar. And same thing with Jalen Hurts. Could have a similar PFF grade and maybe production through the roof. We're able to start quantifying not just having multiple receivers, but having that one guy that makes everything else better.
Yes, I am very interested, and we have some nice case studies in KC and Green Bay, because KC went with the replacement by a number of guys.
Aggregates.
Replace one guy with a myriad, kind of like how they replaced their offensive line last year. Let's just bring in throw the kitchen sink at it. That's what they did the receiving core. So they have talent there. Maybe it's not top-end talent. I don't think they have any true elite guy, and even Kelsey at his age right now probably wouldn't even qualify as a true elite separator, to where, it's going to have to be within the scheme. He's not going to be saying, screw it, throw it up to Tyreek, or screw it like Tyreek's open somewhere. That's not going to be in the game plan, and obviously defense aren't going to have to account for it. Whereas Aaron Rodgers and the Packers replaced it with not the same caliber of names. They replaced it with nobodies. And now Rodgers, the whole last 6 games without Devontae, 17 touchdowns, 1 pick, over 300 yards a game. Like, yes, he has done well without Devontae Adams.
But by the way, Mahomes has similar stats, that 5-game stretch that Tyreek Hill was out.
Yeah.
So, but those are small sample sizes.
But again, yes, that is a very small sample size, and it's usually the duds that really show out where you have no one to get the ball to, that we'll see if those prop up more often this season.
Yeah, I mean, Rodgers had, 1 game without Devontae last year? It was the Cardinals game. And a lot of people use that as they went in and they beat the undefeated Cardinals. Like, Rodgers, the offense wasn't that good.
That game was a joke.
Yes.
That game was an absolute, what they did offensively. And now it was more than just Devontae, right? They had a couple guys out with COVID. I think Lazard was out as well.
They had COVID issues.
Yeah, they had it was basically even a worse version of this year's wide receiving core, and it just turned the offense into side screens left and right. So
that would be the concern. I mean, there's also a difference too, I think, when you're losing a receiver and you have to kind of adjust on the fly versus they're going into the season knowing what they're dealing with. But again, I'm always of the mind. So here's the phrase I've used recently. I don't want to know what Patrick Mahomes looks like without Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. I don't want to live in that level of receiver. I don't want to live in that world if I'm the Chiefs. So I want to make that.
Well, they drafted Sky Moore, so they're not going to have to.
They did draft Sky Moore, which and we love Sky Moore, but what is Sky Moore plus Juju plus Valdez-Scantling plus whatever's left of Mecole Hardman? How is that going to add up when? Look, there are just plays where Tyreek Hill, you throw a 13-yard little in-cut and he takes it to the house, right? That's how they beat the Bills, right? I mean, just hey, Tyreek Hill, go take over this game. You and Kelce, the Chiefs don't have that anymore. But is this going to be better for Mahomes' development, or is he going to come back down to earth?
No, I 100% agree with you that if I'm Chiefs brass, I probably would have done more to try to keep Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
And obviously the cap situation dictated having to move on from him, what he wanted contract-wise. And the deal they got, by all means, do that. Because like you said, I don't want to have to figure out, Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith are probably licking their chops thinking about Patrick Mahomes' fall from grace if it doesn't work out for him this year. Every morning show is wants it not to go well. I think they did a good job replacing it, but if I was the Chiefs, that is a duo that, again, like I said, Tyreek Hill, what he does to change games is not something I would have wanted in an ideal world to see Patrick Mahomes go without.
The best place to play fantasy football this summer is Underdog Fantasy. Their Best Ball Mania tournament has $10 million in total prize money, and the best part is you just draft your fantasy football team, and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, no in-season management. Underdog gives you your best score each week, and the highest scores at the end of the year win. The champion of Best Ball Mania last year drafted right here in June, so there's no time better than right now to join Underdog. Take your shot at $1 million draft. Plus, here's the deal. Underdog is going to give you double your first deposit up to $100 when you sign up with the promo code PFF. And you also, if you play 10 of those dollars using promo code PFF, you get a free PFF subscription. It's a no-brainer. So what are you waiting for? Head to UnderdogFantasy.com or the App Store. Play $10 with the code PFF and draft your Best Ball Mania team today. That's a great deal. We get some other great deals for you later in the show. So yeah, this is look, from Mahomes' standpoint, I still think he's awesome. Yeah. We did get a question on Twitter, which quarterback would you start a franchise with today? Is this changing? I think last year at this time, it's definitely Mahomes. Maybe I think you could make an argument for Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Justin Herbert probably in that conversation right now, or Lamar, or whoever you want to say. But
not Lamar.
Probably not Lamar over those guys. But I would still say Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
However, I think he came back down to earth a little bit last year. But those are the ebbs and flows of just playing football. Not everybody's going to have a 90-plus PFF grade every year. But this is the first time we're going to see, can he expand his skill set a little bit, not rely on those top two guys. Sometimes it works. Deshaun Watson lost DeAndre Hopkins, had his best season. Matthew Stafford lost Calvin Johnson, kind of had seasons where he got better, not relying on just the one guy. At the same time, again, I don't know if I want to live in that world for a while. But the Chiefs' overall roster got just a lot of talent, right? The same way the Packers might have their best defense with Rodgers, right? They added a lot there. The Titans are going to be the curious one because, again, Ryan Tannehill, you could say, hey, it's Tennessee, it's Derrick Henry. That's what rejuvenated his career. I'm like, man, I think it's AJ. I think it's having AJ Brown and just how special he is. So I think this is just something to track. Yeah,
30-year-old Robert Woods off an ACL is not the same.
Robert Woods plus Traylon Burks. I want to talk some rookies. I want to look back at this last year's rookie class a little bit. So 2021 rookies. When I look back at what Micah Parsons and Kyle Pitts, so like the non-quarterbacks, you ever seen a group that looked like unicorns, right? Guys that we were joking, like, don't look for the next Micah Parsons, don't look for the next Kyle Pitts, don't look for the next whoever. I feel like last year's draft class had a bunch of those types of guys.
Yes, I think I did say a lot prior to last year's draft. I'm like, this one feels a lot like 2011 draft.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, I wasn't doing draft stuff in 2011. I was a junior at Notre Dame. But it felt like just going in, someone asked, who's going to bust in the top 10? I'm like, I don't think any of these guys are going to bust.
Yeah.
Maybe some of these opt-out guys if they sat on their ass for a whole year. But even then, that's not how this works. Like, those guys opted out to improve their game as much as possible, not in a
just
team
to go
setting.
back.
So,
To go back to 2011 really quick, it's the year there were a ton of quarterbacks at the top. Cam Newton, number 1, and Jake Locker goes number 8. Blaine Gabbert goes 10. Christian Ponder goes 12. So people were going to get their quarterbacks. But all around those guys, you have Von Miller, Marcel Darius, who had a run but wasn't special. But Von Miller, special. A.J. Green, Patrick Peterson, Julio Jones, all special. Aldon Smith was special for a chunk of his career before running into issues. Tyron Smith, J.J. Watt, right? Robert Quinn had his run. Ryan Kerrigan. Just really good. The top 15 is crazy with really good football players.
5 of the top 11 may be Hall of Famers.
Yes.
Which is insane to think about.
So you're comparing 2021, so the class that we just saw.
Yeah, I guess once a decade.
Rookies.
It's a once-in-a-decade class.
Once in a decade. Perfect. But I think that there was just so many, Micah Parsons, I haven't seen a prospect like that. Knowing what we know now, the fact that the dude just rolled up to edge defender from linebacker and looked like Lawrence Taylor, that just doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, he honestly looked like what Von Miller looked like as a rookie.
Right.
It's just like he's so freakishly athletic. He doesn't really have a refined game, but he's going to clown every tackle that can't match his speed. And every game he basically went up against a below average right tackle, it was over. He could not be blocked. So
Jamar Chase. So the guys that are around that, right? Mm-hmm. So you have Kyle Pitts, who is just a completely different tight end / wide receiver.
I think almost gets underrated.
Yeah.
Because of what Jamar Chase did and some of these other guys did. By the way, he went for 1,000 yards.
And you make the point a lot at tight end. Those guys do not hit the ground running. You don't see that often. But year 2 and 3, if they're special, even a Gronk or a Kelsey, they were good the first year they played. But then they became special by year 2, I believe it was. I know it was for Gronk, but
Kelsey was hurt his first year.
He was hurt, but the second year, that's why I said second year that he played, I believe, it was like, oh, okay, this Travis Kelsey guy. We're probably going to get that from Pitts next year. Jamar Chase was an immediate wide receiver 1. Penei Sewell, as much as we overthought his preseason at right tackle, became a very good right tackle. Yes. And him and Rashawn Slater, look like 2 of the better tackles going forward. Micah Parsons, who I mentioned. So there are a whole bunch of special players. And then the other similarity to 2011 is where are all the quarterbacks coming from? And we thought the quarterbacks were going to be the strength of the class.
Yeah.
So we didn't prep for anything. I just putting you on the spot as far as what do you think? Where are these quarterbacks going to go in year 2? Are we going to see Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson? Let's start at the top. Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. How bad was year 1? How concerning is year 1? And what are they going to do in year 2?
I'll say I was concerned about Lawrence until week 18. The game he had against the Colts was everything that he was billed as.
Yeah.
Against top-tier defense, not a ton of help, showed the entire skill set. So I'm not worried about Lawrence. What I am worried about is the team they've built around him. You could still make an argument they have a bottom 5 O-line and receiving core. At best, it's a bottom 10 O-line receiving core. There's no argument that it's a top 20.
And they are better. They've upgraded.
And they've upgraded, but it's still not great. So that's the worry, in my opinion, with Trevor Lawrence. Wilson obviously has no excuses, but he's the one of this bunch that I would actually be concerned about because there wasn't market improvement. and obviously coming from BYU, coming from a situation he played in, we didn't expect a monster rookie year. He played behind the best offensive line in college football, was under pressure, just none, working from massive pockets, could do whatever he wanted, and again, low-level competition because no one in Power 5 played any of the Group of 5 teams last year, or the independents like BYU. So he kind of was always going to struggle, but you thought you wanted to see it get better. And there's not a game to point to where it's like, yeah, that's the Zach Wilson that we thought we'd get.
Slightly better, but not drastically.
Yes. There's throws, there's play, and that's kind of the if you're going to hang your hat on anything, the high end was still there at times, like outside the pocket, some beautiful throws on his tape. A number, and especially when Elijah Moore started getting running, a number of throws to him as well that I liked. But
he was decent against the Bucs, I think second to last week of the season for like 3 quarters, right?
Until
It was
then
like,
fell
this
off
is
the
his
cliff.
game. This is his game. And then the fourth quarter, the Jets collapsed and
that was
Wilson
such a bad
collapsed.
collapse.
Right. It was a bad collapse. So yeah, that's part of the issue with Zach Wilson. Trey Lance, we don't know. I do still think he's just going to, if they start him in San Francisco, I mean, there's still a chance that it's Garoppolo's team for one more year. That's
so weird. Such a weird
possibility. But if it's Trey Lance, I really think he's going to just improve their run game, add special throws to the mix. But you're going to have to deal with, he's throwing the ball to corners a lot in the preseason and in the few regular season attempts that we saw from him.
And he was the youngest of the bunch, and he didn't play a year. So
320 FCS dropbacks. He played JUCO too, but 320 NCAA dropbacks. That is the lowest since Michael Vick. That's how inexperienced Trey Lance was as a major college football passer. And again, he did it at the FCS level for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
So
he could very well have. I don't want to say he's Josh Allen, but like Josh Allen year 3 was a different guy. It may very well be year 3 when he's a different guy.
I think I asked you this before on the show, and I asked Spielman a couple weeks ago, Rosenthal. I asked a lot of the same questions to the various guests. How have things changed here? Because the development of the toolsy quarterbacks, the guys with big arms, athleticism, accuracy issues at some point that they've maybe fixed, decision-making issues that they fixed. This is Mahomes. This is Josh Allen. This is Justin Herbert. I think you could throw Lamar in there because I think he's mitigated accuracy issues and overcome it with being a great athlete. Is it just easier for that to happen in today's NFL? Have we just hit a run? Are these the players that we need to run to because the NFL is developing them better? Like, what's happening in recent NFL QB development?
Your guess is good. You probably have a better idea than I do. And it probably comes down to a lot of like throwing mechanic, like why people are throwing 100 in baseball every left and right. Is that like throwing mechanics have developed to like a science, like a real, like you better be doing this or you're missing the boat sort of science, to where I do think that that's a big part of it, is that just access to better instruction about how to be more accurate.
Footwork.
Is a big thing that obviously people cared about quarterbacks, like developing quarterbacks, whatever, but there was not this emphasis that there was even a decade ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some of those guys too, NFL offense is becoming easier for the most part, right? So if you're creating more open throws on the underneath stuff, then you could kind of like lean on the guys that are doing special stuff. You talk about like hitting the deep crosser and some of those things where it's like those guys do it. But the Cody Kesslers of the world maybe can't do that as often, but they're leveling the playing field on the stuff that maybe a Cody Kessler does well.
Yeah, it's like how many times for Patrick Mahomes' deep ball to Tyreek Hill, how many times is it a down the sideline go ball? That was kind of the in vogue, how you hit a deep ball 20 years ago. Not at all.
They
like,
hit one.
Almost never. But
they hit one, I think it was the Steelers game, and I was like, man, I actually don't remember how many times, like seeing Mahomes just like drop back, hit his back foot, and throw an in-rhythm go ball.
It's just, that's not where the NFL is going down the football field. Is a lot of eye candy underneath to get guys like deep overs, deep posts, that sort of thing, that you're working with far more space than when you're working over the middle of the field.
So it's a slightly different world. So does that underrate Mac Jones? So just to wrap up last year's QB class.
Well, I think that's why everyone was off Mac Jones. Like that stuff takes arm talent. So that is obviously Mac Jones doesn't have elite, doesn't even have, I'd say it's probably below average in terms of just the 32 starters in the NFL. He is on the lower end, probably in the bottom 10 or so, just in terms of pure arm talent. Still winnable. Joe Burrow's in the bottom 10 in terms of pure arm talent, but Joe Burrow hits go balls in his sleep, and that's the Bengals offense because he can do that. Mac Jones has just struggled with that deep area of the field, and it's kind of chicken and the egg too with the personnel he's had there with the Patriots, not having a ton of speed, not having a ton of guys open at that level of the field. But I do think that's just never going to be the best aspect of his game. But I do think he's still going to be a very good starter for a long time.
Yeah,
it's hard not to be.
When Greg Rosenthal was on the show, he was like, hey, look, I might be too much of a Patriots apologist for this, but he was basically saying, hey, are we underrating Mac Jones? Like, we hyped up all these quarterbacks. All of them had issues. Justin Fields had issues, and everybody just kind of blamed his coach. But, like, everybody had issues. Mm-hmm. And Mac Jones is the only one that went out there and, like, was by far the best. Now, he wasn't perfect either. You know, he had some games where the Patriots didn't rely on him. He had some games where he wasn't great.
And his second half of the season was worse than his first half, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Usually you would think it'd be opposite for a rookie.
How much do we even – I always think back to what we did with Sam Darnold. His last 4 games of his rookie season, Sam Darnold was really good. And it looked like, oh, this is what rookies do. They get better late. You know, You have excitement for Sam Darnold into year 2, and it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much do we overrate when things happen.
That's a very good point because.
And even like what you said about Trevor Lawrence, because I thought week 4, because I love the storyline, right? Because like week 4, they come into Cincinnati. I think it was 4. When was Urban at the club? Was it week 4?
It was early on.
It was week 4 or 5, whatever it was. I thought that was like the turning point for Trevor Lawrence. It makes for a good story, and it didn't happen, right? Not everything's that clear cut.
Yes.
So even if Mac Jones' season was in reverse a little bit, does that even matter?
No, I don't think so. And going back and looking at guys who are like these second-year breakout guys, there's not a lot of common threads that align them. Like A.J. Terrell last year was all-pro caliber cornerback after just a below-average rookie season. Like for a rookie first-round pick, there was not a lot to write home about A.J. Terrell's first season. And then turns into an all-pro. So there's a lot of positions where it's just like, you know, year 1 to year 2 is just very, very different. And to me, the Lawrence thing wasn't that it came in week 18. It was just that he showed that high end to begin with. You know, that was the type of game that, you know, Ryan Fitzpatrick probably could have had that game, but Andy Dalton couldn't have had the game that Trevor Lawrence had in week 18. Like the kind of guys who turn out to be middling, below average starters that are just, like I said, your Andy Daltons of the world, your Jimmy Garoppolo's of the world. I don't think they could have gone out there and had the game that Lawrence did.
And that's always what's going to be attractive for Trevor Lawrence. I do think with Doug Peterson this year, things should be better. Mm-hmm. But I wonder how much of a big step Lawrence needs to take here. You know, if he takes a small step forward, are we concerned? Like he's still far away from that potential because we're still talking potential with Trevor Lawrence. I want to get into this year's drafts because we haven't been able to. I know you had your draft reviews, but we'll review this year's draft a little bit, some of the rookies and things to look at for this year. But first, a reminder that the PFF NFL podcast is brought to you by Cash App. Cash App is the easiest way to send, spend, and save your money. You can send or request money from your friends when they owe you dinner, drinks, literally anything. Besides just sending money back and forth, with Cash App, you can invest in stocks with as little as $1, as well as buy, sell, and send Bitcoin instantly. Cash App also lets you design your own debit card completely free to spend money anywhere you'd like. Cash App will laser print it, mail it to you, all for free. And the card comes with free discounts at your favorite places called Boosts. Sign up for Cash App today. Use the referral code TOUCHDOWN, which gives new users $15. It's promo code TOUCHDOWN for $15 free over at Cash App. All right, Mike, again, does the draft, for me, sometimes a month after the draft, I was like, what happened? Like all this information was in my head. I step away from it. I don't even remember who got drafted. I don't even remember what's happening. Is it all fresh in your head, or you're in summer Mike mode here?
It's somewhat fresh. I'm taking a refresher right now. I am on to 2023, admittedly.
Yeah. I want to
but
do a
not
quick
too
preview.
deep into 2023 because I've been taking a few weeks off, but yeah.
Yeah, I want to do a quick preview on 2023 and just what we're looking at, because 2020, every draft is different. But the 2022 draft felt like, okay, we don't know who the quarterbacks are. Still thought a bunch would go in the first round, and they didn't. Mm-hmm. I didn't think that the talent level, as much as we talked about last year's draft and the elite talent, I didn't think that lived in the 2022 class here this year. It was more spread out. I think the NFL even acknowledged that. They were like, hey, the strength of this draft is like round 3 and 4, as far as like relative to
I thought it was
when
very
you
deep.
get when you get players in rounds 3 and 4, it's deeper this year, and you saw teams play that out. So who did you like as far as the draft goes, and we'll get into some of like the more specific rookie situations.
One of the picks I really loved, obviously the Lions landing Hutchinson was fantastic, but Derek Stingley going to Houston, Sauce Gardner going to the Jets, I thought was very much just common sense prevailing.
Yeah.
In a class where we were saying there's not a lot of top-end talents, Those guys are top-end talents. I'd be very hard-pressed to see either of those guys not being successful NFL cornerbacks with the skill sets they displayed. And the Stingley overthinking was mind-numbing to me at times in the pre-draft process. I was just like, this guy is insane. It was like the Derwin James overthinking. It's like, show me the negatives. People point to one rep against UCLA. It's a negative.
Please pause.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. No.
We do not say that player's name on the podcast. The guy on the Chargers who's now number 3. We just refer to him as
Derwin
the player.
James. Okay.
You can use Derwin James works, but if we could just cut that out, please. Mike's going to get banned from the podcast.
That's on me.
If he tears his Achilles in OTAs or something, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like every time we hype him, we're just trying to keep him healthy. Is all we're doing.
Okay, I'm talking about college Derwin.
That guy.
But that guy, different player altogether. Yeah. But it's like, show me negatives show me that many negatives, and there were some in terms of like effort. He was not as locked in, but physical capability was still the guy we saw as a true freshman. That is absolutely insane in what he can do. So yeah, I love that. And then the Sauce Gardner fit to Robert Saleh's defense is just perfect. We got told when we mocked it a bunch that they don't cover corner. They would never going to take a corner. Well, it's like, maybe they would never take a corner. Sauce Gardner is how you'd build a corner for that defense. So if you're going to pass to Sauce Gardner, you will actually never take a corner in the first round. So that would have taken some commitment, and I'm just glad that, I guess, what I thought and what I would have done prevailed in that situation.
I listened to Joe Douglas's press conference after the fact to hear about that, right? Because I do agree with Jets fans that they covet pass rushers, right? But I was trying to dig into Spielman a little bit with how teams do this. We talk a lot in PFF, but like the media space is a lot about positional value, but I'm always curious, like, when does positional value show up in their boards, right? Because you want to put a player grade on a player. Mm-hmm. So even if you call Saquon Barkley, he's a 9, right? The famous Gettleman thing. He's a 9. But when I asked Spielman, I said, do you have a vertical board or horizontal? He said, only a horizontal board. And for our listeners, the horizontal board is basically, here's where I would draft this chunk of players. And they're in order, but they're in a chunk, right? Here's this chunk of players I would take at 10 through 20 or whatever your cutoffs are. So he only worked off a horizontal board. So I'm always wondering, like, where in that process does it show up? So if the Jets truly do covet pass rushers, that might be the case. But something would have happened where they're like, I value Sauce Gardner, either as a player or because he plays corner, or we overcame the fact that he plays corner, so to speak, right? Because we value edges. They valued him so much that they took him over, say, a Jermaine Johnson, who they had in their top 10 on their board, like these other potential edge defenders. That process is just interesting to me because I think we talk about it like, oh, yeah, of course, positional value. But I'm always wondering, like, where do NFL teams bake that in? Is it to the player grades? And I'm not asking you. I'm just conversing here.
It is interesting.
Like, is it in the player? Can you say Saquon Barkley is the best running back I've ever seen? However, I wouldn't take him before 20. Put him on the horizontal board at 20. And we kind of go through this exercise a little bit too, right? When we're putting boards together. It's just an interesting thing to me.
And it's why I hate doing a top 250.
Yeah.
It's nonsensical in a draft room. Like you said, you would never just work off a pure vertical draft board. Like, this guy's gone, well, then we're taking this guy. This guy's gone, then we're taking this guy. It's like those conversations to be had with each pick and with a fit. And like, there are guys that are equal in your eyes a lot. And there's oftentimes tiers where it's like, these three, last year was the OT class, top of the OT class. I'm like, they're really indistinguishable in terms of, not like obviously they have their different strengths and weaknesses, but in terms of quality of prospects. So if I'm at the top, I'm begging to get down to the bottom. It was like 2020 as well, when it was like Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs, Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Wills. And obviously we didn't have Mekhi Becton in that tier, but the top 3 we did, and we're like, well, we're if we're the Giants at 4, instead of drafting Thomas, we just want to get back and get one of them. Is all you'd want. So I think a lot of times that has to factor into play in your draft decisions. But how much that does, I would be curious to see. Obviously, we don't have that insight.
One of the comments that came up in another post-draft press conference, I was listening to the Browns recently, and they made a comment that the NFL did a good job in this draft, picking players where they were expected to go. This was their take on it. Mm-hmm. So, and he was saying, I think it was actually Paul DePodesta, so the guy that from Moneyball and all that stuff that's in the numbers. And I think he said something to the effect of, 4 or 5 years ago, there would be players coming off the board where it's like, okay, that's way earlier than just our expectations. And he was saying this year, maybe other than Cole Strange.
Well, Gruden was in the league. Is probably, and
maybe
he's not now. Maybe it was just Gruden, but no, keep going.
It's true. Not every
it was
Gruden,
it was every Gruden.
Gruden and Mayock.
Yeah.
That was like, I think, turnover-worthy plays went down across the league last year, and I think that's just because Jameis was hurt. Over the last 2 years, they've been down because Jameis hasn't been a starter.
It's a needle mover.
Yeah. But I thought that was really interesting to me. And even as I've studied other drafts, so I was just kind of studying drafts recently, and I was like, man, if you use some PFF information to a T back in, say, 2017, 18, or 19, you would have found some steals. And I feel like we've kind of helped influence maybe board ranking and big board rankings and things like that. So I think teams, the bottom line was it sounded like teams are just doing a better job of drafting players where they're slotted, so maybe there's fewer edges in even finding steals than there were, just because there's so much more information out there and teams are doing a better job. I don't know if you've noticed that at all. We talked a lot about the Cole Strange thing being 70 picks higher than we would have taken him, but maybe an outlier in this year's draft.
I would agree with that sentiment, that I do think teams have gotten better in my time of doing the draft in terms of not really reaching for these athletic project-y guys that's just like, that's not the swing you want to be taking sort of players that are way down other people's boards sort of players.
So any other drafts? We all liked the Ravens. Everybody seemed to like what they did.
Universally. Yeah. Like praised. People were falling all over themselves to praise. There are 2 drafts I would like to highlight, though.
Yeah.
One's the Chiefs. Obvious reasons. That was probably the closest I've ever seen a team draft off the PFF.
They used your draft board, man.
I've never seen, I think of their first 4 picks, 5 picks, 4 were the top guy on the PFF draft board, which never happens. Like we'll say teams get like steals and maybe 3 straight steals, but it's still maybe not the top guy on the PFF board. They were legitimately the top guy when it was their first rounders in Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis, second rounder in Sky Moore, and then the back end of the third in Leo Chanel. We're all the top guy at the time, which is insane. So that one. Then the other one I really want to highlight, and this team has made a lot of good moves, in my opinion, of late, and it may not come to roost just yet, but the Detroit Lions. We rarely say a trade up is sort of in a good value proposition, but what the trade up they did for Jameson Williams was, in my opinion, great value. And compare him to a wide receiver that went 4 picks later in Jahan Dotson, I don't think it's close to the caliber of player you're getting. And so, love that for them. Aiden Hutchinson obviously loved that he felt it too. Josh Pascal, a universally great draft via the PFF draft board, and a great draft for attacking valuable positions.
Yeah.
Which was the massive downfall to Bob Quinn era. We kept saying, what the hell are they doing? They had a 3-year stretch where their top 50 picks were an off-ball linebacker, a running back, a center, a tight end, and another off-ball linebacker. You had 5 valuable picks, and you took the 3 least valuable positions in the NFL.
What was
3 of the least valuable positions in the NFL?
Was it 2019 or 18 where it looked like they were just building their I formation? It was like, we're going to get a fullback. I mean, they got him late, but they drafted a run-blocking tight end. Well, they got Hawkinson, I think. It was that year. You got a good run-blocking tight end. Who's better than that? But a tight end, a fullback, a running back.
Hawkinson, Tavai.
Yeah. An off-ball linebacker and all that stuff.
Or it's just those guys can hit. And Frank Ragnow, great example. He hit. Great center. The offense sucked. Yeah. Because centers don't do shit for you. And not to say they don't do shit for you, but it's great center versus average center will not really change the caliber.
That just can't be the only thing that you're attacking. And now I do think Ragnow's a part of this, but I think they have a nice offensive line, a nice foundation there. And then
I think it's top 5 line in the NFL.
Absolutely. They have that. They absolutely have that potential when they're all healthy. What we saw from Penei Sewell at right tackle, Taylor Decker's still there, a very good left tackle. And now you're adding more valuable positions, right? Like going into last year, it's like, who are their receivers? You got Amon-Ra St. I mean, that's also like when you're a rebuilding team, I'm like every year trying to give hope for this team that's going to win 2 games. And I always say, you're trying to find guys that are going to be a part of the rebuild. You have 4th-round pick Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had a very good season. It's like, all right, he's a part of the rebuild. Now you added Jameson Williams to that. St. Brown's not going to be a 1, I don't think. He's going to be a nice complementary piece, but you're adding pieces there. You're adding to your defensive line. You're adding to the more valuable positions after you've got this pretty good foundation that you've built there in Detroit. A lot of PFFers, our nerds, Mike, were skeptical of the trade up by the Lions because our, draft sim and all that stuff, trade sim, values picks more.
Yeah.
Almost always. I think there's arguments on both sides. And we are at this crossroads in trading where every team has their own, trade chart and every team, but they're always kind of using the Jimmy Johnson as you also kind of have to know who you're trading with. Like, does this team value Jimmy Johnson? And if they do, we'll give them what they want because we're going to find our value.
The Vikings damn sure do not.
What's that?
The Vikings obviously do not value
the Vikings
Jimmy Johnson.
don't. I mean, they're working off their own stuff
and
picking in volume. My justification for this, though, is like if you traded up, even if like I love Devin Lloyd, but he's a linebacker. Like if you traded up to go get Devin Lloyd, who I think is going to be a very good player, the upside isn't there. The upside with a Jameson Williams, and I'm okay chasing some level of upside in the draft, not from a player eval standpoint, but from positionally, right? This idea that a speed receiver is going to have this residual effect on your offense and stuff. So I just love Jameson Williams and I love speed, so I justify it. I'm okay with it.
And it's also sort of, not to say this roster couldn't have used more talent. There weren't a lot of starting spots in this roster available, truthfully. They have a lot of guys. They drafted a bunch of DTs last year. They have a deep edge group now. They have, the other positions that you say they need, that like they need to fill, are like off-ball linebacker and maybe safety to like help. Like those are obviously they could have gotten a good one in the second round. I thought there were deep classes in both those positions into day 2, but a true number 1 wide receiver, a guy like Jameson Williams with his speed, was not going to be there. Never is going to be there at the back end of the first round like that. So pairing him with DJ Chark, obviously Chark 1-year deal, Williams ACL, whatever. But if that's your receiving core going forward with Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think you're happy about that.
Any other rookies in particular or situations or teams that you want to highlight coming out of the draft? Like who are we looking at that we're just going to say, hey, this guy's going to have a great – who's going to hit the ground running as a rookie? And while you're thinking about that, let's go back to the Trayvon Walker pick.
Do we have to?
Really quick here. Because, look – again, PFF has many different personalities and opinions and stuff like that. There are some of us that would be purely numbers-based who might take a less tactful approach and say, Jacksonville, you guys are idiots for drafting Trayvon Walker. There are others who try to, others of us who try to bring a little bit more nuance and try to say, well, here's what the Jaguars were thinking. And then, so where do you land on this? I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't have made that pick, but I can at least describe what the Jaguars were thinking with the fact that Trayvon, like we haven't seen anybody work out like him. Yeah. Really haven't, as far as size, length, and all that stuff. So I kind of get it. I wouldn't do it, but I kind of get it. Like, where do you land on how they landed on Trayvon Walker?
Yeah,
versus Aiden Hutchinson, right? I mean, it's really, they chose Walker over Hutchinson. What's going into that process to choose one over the other?
Truthfully, I was floored.
You didn't think it was actually going to happen?
Did not think it was actually going to happen because I just don't think Balky's going to be able to see out his tenure or like see out by the time Trayvon Walker comes good. If that ever happens, Balky's not he's not going to be there because Trayvon Walker is going to. I would bet a lot of money he makes a very little impact as a rookie, and if your number 1 overall pick's not doing shit on a defensive line that obviously needs help in year 1, and you bottom out again, or you miss the playoffs again, I don't see how I can justify, especially with how pissed the fan base is with him already. I'm saying justify that. I'm not hubris enough to sit here and say there's no way Trayvon Walker's ever going to be better than Aiden Hutchinson.
Of course.
But there's no way right now that he's better than Aiden Hutchinson. Like right now I can tell you Aiden Hutchinson's better.
Yeah.
And year 1 I can tell you Aiden Hutchinson, if healthy, will be more productive on an NFL football field. And it's not like Aiden Hutchinson's a slouch athletically. It's not like we're comparing Chase Winovich to Rashawn Gary here.
Is there a concern with Hutchinson, though? Because, again, I always said, well, he's not a – have we been too blessed with the Bosa's, Myles Garrett, and Chase Young? I mean, they are the pinnacle of edge prospects who stepped onto campus, looked like future number 1 overall picks, never deviated from that. They all went in the top 3 only because there were quarterbacks that went ahead of them a couple times, right? Aiden Hutchinson wasn't that guy. Like, on our draft board going into last year, like at this time last year, Hutchinson's in the 20s or 30s, wherever he was, whereas a Bosa or a Garrett or a Chase Young were always top 5, top 3, top 1 on the draft board. Is that a concern for Hutchinson that he wasn't this wire-to-wire prospect, and even the final product wasn't at their level, so it made it more difficult for Balky? He's like, I got the top pick. There's no slam dunk edge. I'm going to choose this hypothetical upside over the safer-looking player.
Hutchinson was good as sophomore, but he was also a different player as sophomore, and then got hurt as junior, so we didn't get to see that. But he was 285 back then, 260 now. So a different type of player altogether in like his usage and what he brings to the table. And he's also, the other thing that got not talked about enough with him was he's super young for a senior coming out. He's only, I believe, 2 months older than Nick Bosa was when he got drafted. And Nick Bosa obviously was a true junior coming out. So I can kind of forgive the fact that as a true sophomore at, I believe he would have been 19 years old then, that he wasn't a completely dominant specimen as a completely, again, different type of player. So, I didn't think it warranted overthinking at the top of the draft, and that Aiden Hutchinson was just good enough that you could chalk up an easy W that, quite frankly, the Jaguars need,
Are there any other rookies or situations that you're looking at where guys are going to have an immediate impact?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple that I'm very curious about. One is to see how the Bengals room shakes out. I love their approach to this draft. You already have one of the deeper secondaries in the NFL, and adding a versatile safety and a versatile corner to it with your top 2 picks, especially with what you're going to have to go to get back to the Super Bowl.
So it's Daxton Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt. Where did you have Daxton Hill? We had him listed as a safety on the board. He basically played a slot role at Michigan.
I think he should play corner, truthfully, in the NFL. What he played at Michigan was very much more akin, in my opinion, to like a corner in the league. And traits-wise, he's 6 foot with a 6'7" wingspan.
Yeah,
I think he has a longer wingspan than is about the same wingspan as Ahmad Gardner does. And everyone's raving about Ahmad Gardner and what he could do at the line of scrimmage. Daxton Hill could be that guy. So with 4.3 speed, with obviously incredible change of direction drills that he had at the combine, like he could be that guy. And Cam Taylor-Britt, even though he played corner at Nebraska, like he's one of the best tacklers, one of the best hitters. He could even play safety. So you could have those guys flip-flopped. And just that was kind of the Bengals' MO, though. Is one week they'd play man-heavy, one week they'd go zone-heavy. Like Lou Anarumo wants guys that can do a lot of different things so that he can himself do a lot of different things. So I'm curious to see where those guys shake out. And the other one that, as a homer, I'm very curious to see how it shakes out is the Packers defense.
Yeah.
Not the wide receiving core, because I don't think
not a homer as
either
much
of those
as
guys
you're
are
an owner.
Yeah, as much as an actual I'm invested in them, quite literally.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how good this Packers defense is. On paper, it's easily the best defense I think they've had since 2010, since they won the Super Bowl. And Quay Walker
was good.
Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, like, are those immediate impact guys that move the needle and push this defense into legitimate shutting down sort of territory, top 3, top 5 in the NFL sort of territory, because on paper, it looks like they could be.
They have a very good secondary. Linebacker's been like the annual issue, but you have Devondre Campbell who broke out. And then you get insane. Devondre Campbell comp, Quay Walker.
I mean, they might have the best tackling linebackers in the NFL right now. Like, Campbell was the best tackling linebacker last year. Quay Walker, easily the best in the draft.
What did he miss? 3 tackles all last year? Walker,
I think 3 in his career. I want to say.
When I was watching Walker, I just the word. It's interesting because he's so athletic and long and checks all the measurables boxes, and I'm just thinking he's safe. He's just a safe linebacker. He doesn't give up big plays. He tackles, makes the expected play.
He's like the linebacker version of Trayvon Walker. where it's just like he's so smooth, so athletic. There's no real high end to his tape, but there's no low end either that you're really worried about. I think that plays a lot more at linebacker, though, than it does off the edge, rushing the passer, because you kind of need the high end rushing the passer. At linebacker, if you're not making TFLs, if you're not making splash picks, but you're not in the wrong position, you're still doing your job.
So the safety equivalents for me would be guys like Devin McCourty or Adrian Amos around the league. Amos in the Packers secondary.
All right.
Like we've had people question our Adrian Amos grade through the years because he doesn't make a ton of splash plays, but we're like, hey, we're grading every play. Exactly. And he's just in position. He doesn't have a lot of negatives on his tape. Devin McCourty doesn't have a lot of negatives on his tape. And there's value in being a safe safety. And there's value in being a safe linebacker, just not busting coverages. Actually. Right, it is the definition. So you don't all have to be Earl Thomas, crazy range and flash plays once every 3 games. So maybe there's something to it. But Quay Walker was just an interesting late riser who did not have incredible college production, and we'll see where that slots in with the Packers in year 1. Let's look ahead.
Yes.
To 2023. So what do we have on the site so far? We have a 2023 draft board.
We do not.
Okay.
We have some player rankings going up. More will be going up this week, but we have a player list basically of guys to watch on the site.
So we always start with the quarterbacks, and I always like to compare to last year at this time. Mm-hmm. Last year at this time, we were talking about the Spencer Rattlers of the world, but everything came with a caveat, right? It's like we need to see big step forwards from every quarterback that we're ranking here for the 2022 draft class. And then we saw Spencer Rattler gets benched, and we didn't know. Kenny Pickett emerges, and we had no idea what was happening. This year, you've got your Bryce Youngs and CJ Strouds of the world, but there are names from all over the place getting mocked into like very early first rounds from all over the place. And there's some similarities, consistency with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, and then it's all the other names. There's a whole lot of what ifs in there as well. But there's a lot more names, I think, this year. Is that a fair way to sum up next year's draft? There's a lot more quarterbacks to watch. I'm not sure how it's going to shake out, but we're probably going to have a lot more first-rounders than just one.
Yes, and I think we already have guys that, just say Bryce Young from Alabama, C.J. Stroud from Ohio State, would have, if they were in last year's draft, they would have gone ahead of anyone else.
Yep.
They just already would have. So we're already at that point with a couple guys. This isn't like, Spencer Rattler, hopefully he breaks out. It's like, no, those guys have actually been legit in a lot of QB things you need to be legit in. So I do think that's why you saw maybe teams like the Falcons or the Seahawks, and obviously Falcons end up in the 3rd round, but like not pulling the trigger early when quite obviously they could use a franchise quarterback, not being willing to say that because they'll be in the mix for next year's guys. And there are probably 2 that I would feel comfortable putting right now in that mix. So those 2, I really like Tanner McKee from Stanford. I get that he doesn't put up gaudy stats. If you watch that offense, no one would have put up gaudy stats. It is a joke offense, but he has ridiculous arm talent, size, and is a talented athlete in his own right. And there are couple other names in the mix for people, and Anthony Richardson from Florida, Tyler Van Dyke from Miami, who are toolsy, big what ifs. Those are the what if guys, in my opinion.
Anthony Richardson had games where he just took over as a runner.
Free.
And it was Nick Fitzgerald at Mississippi State a couple years ago. Remember him? He was big and huge, and he was a good runner. And when he held the ball, you couldn't even see the football. His hands looked so big. Sometimes, Richardson is just a monster in everything he brings to the table, but definitely needs more polish as a passer.
Yeah.
But as an athlete, as an incredible athlete that could make that jump, you have to highlight that guy, right? Yeah. You have to highlight a Richardson.
And Will Levis in that mold as well of.
He's getting top 10 hype already.
Yeah, and he's 6'3", 230.
Yeah,
big arm. Those are the guys that everyone's looking for, and then athletic as well. So there are a number in that mold of bringing a ton of tools to the table, and not 6 foot like Malik Willis. Bryce Young's the only guy in this class who's not ticking the size boxes wholesale at the quarterback position.
Do you think he has enough arm talent despite the size and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think his arm's solid, honestly. It's I'm trying to think of like a tier I'd put it in. Maybe like Deshaun Watson-esque. tier of arm
Watson
talent.
doesn't have a cannon.
Yeah.
I was debating this with someone the other day, the idea of average, right? When you say this guy's an average NFL arm, what are you basing that on, right? Because I would say of the 32 starting NFL quarterbacks, 28, 29 at least have an average NFL arm. But if you're just
That's what I was saying, like with the Mac Jones thing. I almost said average. Well, he's definitely below average because he's probably in the bottom 10.
But he has but
everyone would say
in
average.
a vacuum, he has an average NFL arm.
Yeah.
But most starters have an average NFL plus arm, right?
Yeah.
Not a lot of below average arms.
And it's like average compared to everyone that gets even a sniff in the NFL.
Right. Well, again, because we need a baseball analogy here.
Mm-hmm.
I, at one point, had an average major league fastball, throwing 90 to 93.
There you go.
At the same time, if you put me in the big leagues, I wasn't throwing harder than half the pitchers there. But I was classified, that's an average fastball.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just it's this baseline of like what you're working with as far as arm goes.
Yeah.
So there are some toolsy type of guys. What about DJ Ooyagalele at Clemson? What happened last year? Because he has an absolute
Too many Dr.
cannon.
Pepper commercials. That's what happened.
Yeah,
No,
he was
that's what everyone wants to say.
Was he the first NIL like legit commercial?
Yeah, I think so. Like the Dr. Pepper, he was in a nationally syndicated big commercial because he was sick as a freshman. Like
he was really good filling in for Trevor Lawrence. He was a high recruit, and he's got great tools. That all should have been a good sophomore year.
His arm, his release is just he's got the yips. Legitimately has the yips. He is all over the place, and he has the strongest arm in this class. He has like once he hits the NFL, it's like Ryan Mallett tier of arm of where
I love that.
An unbelievable fastball they could put on it. I mean, it will be in the conversation for the best arm in the league once he gets there, because he's Jamarcus Russell 2.0 size wise. I mean, 6'6", like 260. Guy is enormous, but yeah, straight up yips. And it wasn't even like bad decisions really last year. He just could not hit.
His accuracy was just all over the place.
Anything.
I haven't seen a quarterback feel like they have the yips other than there was a stretch of Blake Bortles where he was throwing the ball where he literally looked like he was thinking every single throw, like looking at his hand coming through type.
And then
of
just
thing.
like the release gets all over, like release is not consistent one to another. You're getting really long with it, and that was like Ooyagalele last year.
So if you're an NFL draft fan, it's like every college season's exciting, but when you're watching this college season, I think we're going to have some just quarterbacks emerge out of nowhere. But there's a big list to pull from. Yeah. You always do, but it feels like we have a big starting point here. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing about last year, by the way. Kenny Pickett did emerge and come out, but he still didn't. You didn't have Joe Burrow, you didn't have Kyler Murray. Those guys legitimately came out of nowhere. Not that nobody had ever heard of them, but they came like from a prospect standpoint. It was like they're number one overall. That's a slam dunk. We didn't know that a year ago at this time, and then they did. We didn't have that in last year's class. This year, we could always have that. Spencer Rattler, man. What if he figures it out in South Carolina? He's extremely talented.
Yeah.
And maybe it's, a new system will help him play within structure more or whatever, he needs to fix.
I still don't know if anyone's touching him with how, like, personality stuff and whatnot, but yeah, or like touching him that high to really say he's, number one overall pick high. But yeah, I will say this about 2023. The positions that are the sexier positions that get the hype, they're going to be better next year.
Yeah.
Quarterback, pass rusher, D-line. There are better players. I think I'm trying to think of the number of positions. I would definitely say quarterback, you'd already have in the 2023 class would have been the QB1 in this year's past class. Will Anderson on the edge would have been edge 1 in this class. Jalen Carter, the Georgia defensive tackle.
He might have been the best.
Would have been
DT1.
Yeah. Would have been DT1. He would have gone ahead of Jordan Davis in this year's class. Would he have been draft eligible? I think Michael Mayer, the Notre Dame tight end, obviously not a great tight end class, but he would have been tight end 1 in this upcoming year. I'm trying to think if there are any other positions. That's probably it, but like those are running back also is the other one. Bijan Robinson would have been RB1 in this year's class. Would he have been draft eligible? So there's more sexier positions that will get talked about. And the running back class especially is going to be one that truly could be an all-timer this year.
All right, well, let's go down that path here.
All right.
The NFL's been smarter, as we think, as far as drafting running backs a little bit lower. But the 2017 draft class that had Was that Derrick Henry too? But it was Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook,
16 was
Christian
Henry.
McCaffrey. That was 17, right? All those
Yeah,
guys?
that was the 17 one.
That class, because those guys came in as freshmen, and you were like, oh, that's going to be a special running back class in a few years. In 2017, you had Kareem Hunt in there. You had a lot of good running backs. But that was a time when it was more, Leonard Fournette went at 4, right? You were more likely to take running backs high. Mm-hmm. I was even more likely to consider running backs that high. I would have taken Dalvin probably 10th, top 10 or whatever. Will teams do that? Is the running back class that good that teams will do that? Or if teams smartened up, or have we just not seen a class this deep, this high end in a few years?
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
And truthfully, the fact that it's so deep and that's so good right now, like on paper, would make me not want to draft one more in the first round,
Yeah.
It's I
get that.
I can get one in the second. Even if you are one of the teams that would draft a running back highly, like the second round, you're saying to yourself, I can get one of these guys in the second. And now there are some backs that have unique skill sets. Like Devin Achane, the Texas A&M back, is going to run mid-4.2s probably when he comes out. Even just based on like his 100-meter times that he has at Texas A&M, because he's in the low 10s.
Mid-4.2s?
He is. He can fly. So someone that, you want the mid-4.2s back. You want the Chris Johnson 2.0. Got to go. You're not going to get that every year. So there are some interesting skill sets in this class, but it is super, super deep. I am very excited to see these
Deuce
guys play
Vaughn,
some.
5'6", 173.
But he's lights out.
Is he going to go?
I think he's going to go day two, honestly. I
have a big dynasty draft this weekend.
Okay.
So I'm checking out your board over at pff.com. It's not necessarily in order like you said, but you got a list of players.
You want, if you're going under the radar, maybe last round. It's probably not under the radar. People know. Dwayne Mcbride, though, from UAB. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm seeing him.
Awesome back.
I'm seeing him on the list here.
I don't know. I haven't watched his high school tape. I've looked into his background too much. But how he ended up at UAB, because his freshman tape at UAB is insane.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of like Tyler Smith at Tulsa. I'm like, just went back and watched Tyler Smith's freshman tape. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys now first-round pick from this past year. I'm like, his freshman tape was insane.
Yeah.
He's already throwing people around. How does that happen where a guy goes to a school like that and is already hitting the ground like he should have been at Bama,
Are there any other – so you kind of hinted at it. I was going to ask position groups that are strengths, and you kind of talked about the high end. But let's say defensive line. Is there depth in this defensive line class? Or is it – there's a lot of projection at this time, especially with defensive linemen, where we put guys pretty high, where it's like we expect a big step forward because this guy's big, long, athletic. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Where's the depth looking on the defensive line this year?
So we've had, 3 straight bad defensive tackle classes,
Yes.
I'd say.
Yes.
There's just been a lack of talent coming in the league. You got to go back to 19, where Quinnen, Ed Oliver, Jeffrey Simmons, that was like the last good DT class. We're like, these guys are good. This year, I think 2023 is going to be like that.
Back to
where
that.
It's like, there's guys that are actually difference makers. Jalen Carter from Georgia, Brian Breesy from Clemson.
Number one
overall
recruit. Yep.
He did tear his ACL last year, so obviously we'll have to recover for that. But those two, Jacqueline Roy from LSU, Gervon Dexter from Florida, like there are guys in this year's class that I think 3-4 first rounders, maybe even 3-4 top 20 guys.
I was always wondering if that was just the ebbs and flows of college football. They're not developing defensive tackles, and I think guys that have old 3-4 defensive end, you're not getting like the 3-4 defensive end body type anymore. The guy that's 6'6", long. Those guys are becoming tackles probably coming out of college more than defensive tackles. You're just not seeing as many old school 3-4 defensive ends. Or really explosive 3 techniques, because they're playing so many odd fronts in college, and you're just not getting interior
3
penetrator
techniques,
types.
not like a position in a ton of defenses in college. So
that's frustrating in the evaluation process, isn't it? Because you just have so many. A lot of defensive tackles are just space eaters.
Well, because
in college,
the sort of genesis of that is that guys can't rush the passer in college, or like guys aren't skilled enough, athletes aren't high end enough. That a lot of teams just take their D-line and say, hey, you're run defenders.
Yeah.
Even Georgia. Like Georgia's uses their D-line as run defenders, and their linebackers are their blitzers. Their linebackers are the guys that got to get home consistently. And a lot of teams are trending that way because of just the lack of 295-pound guys that can move, so, and realizing that I can find a 230-pound linebacker that can move a lot easier than I can a 295-pound, 6'4" defensive tackle. So I think you're seeing a lot of that in college, whereas in the NFL, it's a necessity. You cannot just rely on that. You're putting your one, like teams are too good at blitz pickup, and two, you're putting your secondary a lot of risk, and so you need guys that can actually win one-on-ones to consistently win defensively. So it's just a different game along the front seven a lot of times in college.
All right, let's wrap it up with this, because I know you get how long have the Tailgate podcast been going? You guys,
we started as 2-4 drafts. 3 years.
I'm sorry, like how long? What's the length of your average podcast?
Oh, like that? About an hour.
Okay, because I know you get a little twitchy after an hour.
Oh,
it's not like Sam and I were just we can go for 12 hours and just keep going, and my outro's 15 minutes and all that stuff. You get a little twitchy after an hour, so we're gonna let you get out of here soon. Anything else on 2023 that you want to hit on, and then I want to ask you two questions.
I think that's it for 2023 for now that I've seen. So
one question came. Well, I'll get to Sam's question in a minute here. He's got a question for you. He's on the road. He's got a question for you. My question is, we kind of rehash this every year when we get to talk. How has your evaluation process changed over the years? What have we learned? And in kind of what we were just talking about with college football, how has college football changed to make life easier or usually more difficult in the evaluation process, right? More RPOs, all these things that make it harder on linebackers, harder on O-line evaluation. How has that process changed over the years for you?
So obviously more reliance on traits over the years and less pure football ability at the moment, and more open-mindedness in approaching just anyone. And the whole, tell me what a prospect can do, not what he can't do sort of argument, and really being aware of that a lot of times, not necessarily what they can't do is eminently fixable, but you can put guys in positions where their schemes exist to where they can eliminate those, or not ask them to do the things they can't do. So that's probably one of the biggest things, is just really realizing how much scheme fit or what a guy's asked to do and what he can do at the next level is the most valuable thing. So that, and like I said, the schematic sort of advances of collegiate football versus the NFL, I think they're melding to a degree. I think a lot of, especially with the quarterback position, I think a lot of these guys, what was it, when Jared Goff's coming out, everyone's talking about, the air raid. What's the air raid quarterbacks? No one said a peep about that. That. Now, obviously,
Goff was good enough, and then Patrick Mahomes came out of the air raid. It's like, all right, forget that then.
Exactly. So it's like we talk about the simplicity of some of these offenses guys we're in with Sam Howell, Malik Willis, but it's really, I don't think that's nearly the death knell for that it was for a lot of guys, and even like air raid offensive lineman, Charles Cross going in the first round. You're top 10. Not nearly the big deal that it had been made, because I think it's, like I said, NFL games trending more towards college than it has ever.
It's fun, man. We started college football in 2014. We now have we've got full college football careers for players, and then 3 or 4 years in the NFL. There's a lot more data that we're working with here. And I think a lot of this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where maybe teams have so much more information. It's not that they're never going to bust or make bad picks or whatever it is, but they're starting to make picks that are more in line with expectation maybe. So there's now the trick is, right, because you're always going to compare to Moneyball. Mm-hmm. Moneyball wasn't just about get guys who get on base. It was, people don't value getting on base. So what's the next thing we're going to value? So the NFL continues to look for the things that are being undervalued. And there might be less value in the player selection process in the draft now. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see if that...
Trade your picks away is what you're saying.
Trade all your picks. There are legitimately teams. And I love this, man. There are 32 different businesses out there, organizations. And some teams have said, we're going to trade our first-round picks because sure things are better. And I can get behind that now more than I could maybe a few years ago. Not for every pick, not for Jamal Adams, which, by the way, there was a quote coming out from, did you see that, John Schneider? Basically,
no. What is that?
I'm going to paraphrase from some podcast. that I saw on Ben Baldwin's Twitter stream. So I'm just a potential misinformation provider here because I'm doing it like fourth hand.
Fake news.
But basically said we traded for a player and made him the highest paid player at his position, and that was a mistake. We didn't know what we were doing. Now, the assumption is that that's Jamal Adams. I don't know who else.
Jimmy Graham.
Could have been Jimmy Graham.
Yeah.
Who else would that have been through the years? They didn't do that with Percy Harvin. They traded for him, but
I mean, I do think they made Jimmy Graham the highest paid, right? So
it could have been Graham.
So it is a little.
And he had some basic quote. It was like, we didn't know what our philosophy was at the time. Either way, those were like that was like after the Seahawks won a Super Bowl and everything. That was so maybe it was before that, but I thought it was an interesting quote. But what I was going to get at, the idea of the Rams and teams trading away their first-round picks for established NFL players, it's a viable strategy. I mean, it's one, and that's not the end of the strategy, but I think it's interesting that teams go down that road.
Yeah,
and that's what they've used numbers to kind of back it up and say, well, we're going to look at historical first-round picks, and we're going to look at what a Matthew Stafford or a Jalen Ramsey or whoever brings to the table, and we'll take the established NFL player.
I think teams are being more aware of their sort of life cycles. If that makes any sense?
That's what it is. Well, because some teams, so the Dolphins they made this aggressive move to go get Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs' life cycle is, well, maybe we might be better off taking 5 players instead of 1. Yeah, that might be a better move for us. And that's why
we have too much money inlaid into our roster as it stands.
Yeah.
We need to step back and go draft heavy. The Rams are kind of the opposite of that, and like the teams that have these quarterbacks on rookie deals, whether it's the Bengals, whether it's the Dolphins, whether it's the Cardinals, it's like, well, we need to win now, or else it's going to start to get expensive.
So that'll keep things exciting because every team's going to have slightly different priorities and goals. So even if the data is stronger, they're attacking it maybe in different ways. Sam has a very important question while he's on the road.
Okay.
He wants to know, why would a man capable of growing hair on his head voluntarily shave it?
That is a good question.
Because Sam is now a man who cannot grow hair on his head.
Yeah.
At least not all of it.
I'm doing it to stand with all the stigma against bald men out there, to show them that it's be proud of yourselves.
Oh, I like it. That's good. That was like the old Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where he's like head nodding. You head nod so you could head nod fellow bald guys.
I was walking actually back with Austin right after I did it. I'm like, is there like a nod I got to give to bald guys now? It's like, do we have to like acknowledge that, hey, we're both bald?
Yeah. So you got more work to do. You got to get. You should get the. Did you go all the way? Like
I went to zero guard. I didn't shave it off with a straight razor, but I went zero guard.
I mean, if you're really gonna think about solidarity here, maybe we could.
I wouldn't be opposed to going all the way shaved.
Yeah.
I had done it. I did it once in college, and I at least have a somewhat symmetrical head, so it's not awful. But I mean, it's going to be pretty white though. Like once you just shave it, it's not. There's no sun gets to it, so it's going to be a little egregious.
Yeah. Sam had some. I know you guys don't watch our show, but he had some serious shine issues when he first shaved it. We had to get him a powder, but there was a show when he freshly shaved his head. The viewers were getting blinded. It was not good. It was coming through the screen. It was just.
Was it melting stuff? Like it was focusing a ray of light onto something?
You could not look directly into the YouTube stream, and we lost viewers. It was an ordeal. So he had to get some powder and all. Yeah. It was much better. We lost the shine after that. So I want to wrap it up with one thing here.
Yep.
And it is so Sam and I are going to be doing another charity drive. We were looking for what the charity was going to be. And we have something that's happened internally here at PFF that we want to support. So I also want to get your take on whether or not Sam can throw 60 miles an hour or not. So that's going to be the next charity drive. I just want to throw this out there to the viewers and listeners. We don't have our own GoFundMe now, but there is one for a coworker of ours at PFF. Her name's Tanya Carruthers. She runs our HR department, and there was an unfortunate accident recently through surgery that she had to have that went wrong, and they need medical expenses basically, and we need help with her health recovery. So I'm going to have a GoFundMe. I'll put this as my pinned tweet. We'll probably have Sam put it as his pinned tweet. This is a separate GoFundMe. It's not through the PFF NFL podcast, but they have a goal of raising $25,000. we want to contribute as much as possible, our viewers, our listeners, for the PFF NFL podcast. So we'll find a way to contribute to this, and we'll set our own goal, or maybe it's just whenever she can get to her goal, whatever it is. But we want to support Tanya. She's been great for PFF. It was an unfortunate incident, and you can read more about it on the GoFundMe. But I'll put that as my pinned tweet. We'll tweet that out, and we want to do what we can to support Tanya. So that's going to be our next project here in the PFF NFL podcast. I'll talk to Sam. We'll figure out what the cutoff is going to be for us to see him throw. But that's what we're going to do. Like, Sam thinks he could throw 60 miles an hour. You're a former pitcher and all that stuff. Sam thinks he can just roll out of bed and throw 60. Can he do it? Is he going to hit 60, or is he going to be low 50s like I think?
Man, if he grew up, I don't think he grew up.
He played some cricket. He's thrown objects.
Yeah, but if you didn't throw regularly, you don't develop that the same way.
Yeah.
I don't think 60. I think 50, yeah.
Probably
I don't
in the
think
50s,
60.
right?
Yeah, I just don't think 60. I'm trying to think. My peak, the highest I ever hit on a gun was 84.
Yeah.
And that was like, but I probably,
But you were throwing every day.
I was throwing every day. And like when I was, probably right now, I would be lucky to get past 70. And I still like throw footballs and
Dude, I was throwing
work out.
71 to 74 when I pitched to Sam in November.
Yeah. That's why I'd be lucky to throw 70.
Yeah.
It just, you gotta do that motion to do that motion, sort of thing.
There's two angles to take here. I try to explain, even when I was throwing low 90s, after I stopped throwing for a couple months, I was probably like low 80s, and then I'd build it back up again because I'd throw every day and I would train to get back. You don't really just like wake up and throw your max velocity. So that's one angle. The other angle is Sam is like, well, little leaguers throw 60 and they're 12, and fair, but they're also kind of throwing every day and training
That's
it
the
as
thing.
well.
He could get to 60 for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think that'd be crazy. But if he wants to,
Maybe he's throwing with his dad every day.
Yeah, if he is
playing with his
playing catch out on the road, some long toss, he could maybe get to 60. But yeah.
So we're going to see if Sam can hit 60 miles an hour. And either way, we're going to try to raise money for our friend Tanya over here at PFF. We'll give you guys more of a cutoff and all that stuff. The other thing you can do, PFF.com, NFL Pod, you get 25% off, get all your subscriptions. The draft guide, if you just sign up today, you get next year's draft guide, you get this year's draft guide, you get 365 days of access, get ready for fantasy football, get ready for, if you're going to make a few wagers this year, it's all part of your PFF subscriptions, 25% off using the promo code NFL Pod. You still have a promo code over there at the tailgate?
They ripped them off.
Push
they ripped
ours.
them all out.
Push ours, NFL Pod.
NFL Pod.
Maybe I'll call you back at some point this summer to, give you the reps.
I'm in the bullpen.
Yeah. We'll get you in.
Just let me know.
Throwing 84.
Yeah. I got to be throwing 84 by the season, so yeah, I need the reps.
So if I know Mike, he's going to go in a hole until September. Hope that nobody sees he's not doing anything, right? Is that your
that's
your
goal.
strategy?
With Austin gone, I don't know who would even look.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't even have a boss anymore. You don't have a podcast partner. You're just sitting there.
Living the dream.
That's good. Summer of Mike. We'll have to. You TikTok?
I'm gonna get my handicap. I'm gonna get it low on the course.
Are you good at golf?
Scott. I'm a 6 right now handicap. I'm
legit.
getting lower though. I've had some good rounds.
Good for you. Summer of Mike. We're gonna hear Mike's golf stories.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate having you. Thanks to everybody for listening. I'll be back on Thursday. I don't know what Thursday's show is going to be. I might go monologue. I might go by myself. Think I could do a show by myself?
I'm intrigued at the idea of trying to do one. Not necessarily. Yeah. I wouldn't go live if I were you, but just like on my own, try to do a podcast, listen back, and be like, does this sound horrible?
That's a good idea. Maybe I'll experiment with going, because I'm intrigued by it too. Not for long term, but just to kind of get all your takes out. I did a segment last year by myself. It's challenging though.
I listened to a lot of Jim Rome because he's the king of like the solo.
Yeah.
Just going off for 20 minutes, and it's a lot. Picked up a lot of good pointers about how he approaches it.
Colin Cowherd does a lot of that.
Cowherd
too. You got to do some. You got to tactical pauses.
Mm-hmm. Maybe put on some other voices and like other things.
Yeah, you got to have a conversation with yourself.
Exactly.
Are you working off bullet points, or is there teleprompter involved? It's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Maybe get the producer involved just a little, and then get back.
Maybe I'll try to pick up. Maybe I'll try that on Thursday.
I'll tune in if you do a solo pod for sure.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. At least we'll have one viewer or listener. All right, so we'll have one more podcast on Thursday. Then I think Sam should be back. next Monday. We'll get back at it. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. See you on Thursday.